This conference will now be recorded.
Good evening and welcome to the February 15th, 2023 South Whitehall Township Board of Commissioners meeting. I'm going to call this meeting to order. We do have all commissioners present this evening. Begin the meeting by asking you to please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I'd like to announce that all public sessions of the South Whitehall Township Board of Commissioners are electronically recorded, filed, and posted to the website for public access. At this time, I'm going to ask our Township Manager, Tom Petrucci, to please review our public virtual meeting rules.
Thank you. The public virtual meeting rules are as follows. Courtesy of the floor for non-agenda items will be at the beginning and end of the agenda. Public comment will be limited to 5 minutes per speaker. For all listed agenda items, the board president will call for courtesy of the floor prior to the Board of Commissioners taking action on that specific agenda item. For in-person attendees, please raise your hand to be recognized, then move to the podium when directed. You will be asked to state your name and address for the record and may then proceed with asking your question. For those participating virtually, please mute your microphone or telephone to avoid any background noise that may cause interference in the meeting. The chat box feature will be active throughout the meeting. If you have a comment or question, please type your full name and address into the chat box. The staff member monitoring GoToMeeting will then unmute your microphone and you will have the opportunity to comment or ask a question. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. I'd also like to announce that the Board of Commissioners did meet in executive session prior to tonight's meeting to discuss legal and personnel matters. Moving on to agenda item 4, courtesy of the floor. This is opportunity for any member of the public to comment on any non-agenda items. Is there anyone present? We will get to you in just a moment. Thank you. We have you as an agenda item. Thank you. Yes, we'll be with you in just a minute. Is there anyone online? No. Okay, hearing and seeing none, I'm going to move on to agenda item 5, which is the approval of our meeting minutes from the February 1st, 2023 Board of Commissioners meeting. They have been distributed to the board in advance of tonight's meeting. Are there any questions or comments on said meeting minutes? Hearing and seeing none, do I have a motion to approve?
So moved. Second.
Motion the second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Moving on to agenda item 6, presentation. It's my honor and privilege to introduce Lehigh County Executive Philip Armstrong to present to the board this evening. Welcome. You just turn the microphone.
Just like ours. Thank
Excellent.
you. Phil Armstrong, Lehigh County Executive. There was some miscommunication that somebody said my presentation was 45 minutes. I don't make a presentation. I just kind of come to make sure that if there's any questions on what's going on in the county, anything to do with South Whitehall, kind of give you a little scoop on what's going on. I know we're meeting with Chief Dorney coming up this week on the radios. I checked into that, I was told. So we're still pursuing that. But the Iron Pigs, it's all done. Still a little short. If you know anybody with some extra cash wants to write a check, but we're getting there. But that was the big thing. The county is really, thanks to the ARPA funds, the CARES funds that we all shared, it's really been very beneficial. I just a little while ago, about an hour, I've been down in DC for the last 6 days. I actually got to listen to Janet Yellen speak yesterday. She's sharp. She has me worried about the debt not being worried big time. And I even had a one-on-one with President Biden yesterday afternoon. I had to have the COVID test and the whole bit, but Lehigh County now is on the map. I'm really, really proud of that there were 800 people and only 16 were given one-on-ones. So they know who we are. And I'm going to make sure they continue to know who we are. But really, why I come here is to answer your questions. Did you have anything? And before I do that, there is one thing. Because of all of the grants, because of all the programs that we've been sharing and working together, last year I put in my budget, I thought it was very important to have a community liaison person, somebody that could work with your any questions you might have. So I've been taking Yorman De La Rosa with me to all these meetings now, and he's passing out his cards as he always does. And he is really almost at every meeting, somebody's had a question, and we make sure the very next day he gets it answered. So it's really nice that, we started with the CARES funding going back and forth with all of the communities. And then I just said, with all of the grants, with all these programs, and with all the things we're doing back and forth, I think you deserve somebody that you can have. Hey, I have a problem. Who do I call? That's who you call. And he makes sure it gets solved. He comes right up to me and we work it out. Even if it's not a county thing, we'll find out who in the state or whatever has to have the answer for that. So, do you have a question for the county at this point?
Well, I want to congratulate you on your opportunity to meet with President Biden and to represent Lehigh County
Thank
in
you.
Washington, D.C. That is fantastic.
It's been, there were 800 of us, and I sat at a long table with people from Oregon, Seattle, Washington, Kentucky, Tennessee. And I got up to leave to go in the back to have my private meeting. And they kept saying, why you? And I said, you know what? I can't answer that because I don't know why me. But as long as it is, I'm going to make sure I get there and I speak up and he knows, what's going on here. So.
Does the board have any questions? Tom, did you have any questions, or Chief?
Not at this time.
You could be one of my students, questions? Okay.
Executive Armstrong, no questions, but you are conducting a state of the county address very shortly, aren't you?
Yes.
You want to tell us about that?
Well, we're going to, when I first took over, most state of the county addresses were breakfasts or lunches, which required people to miss work or something to that nature. I decided I want to do mine at 4:15, and we do it at the baseball stadium, and we have refreshments and hors d'oeuvres, pigs in the blanket and things like that, because but I think it's a much better, it's next Thursday, the last Thursday of the month of February. It's much more informal. I like to keep it lively, rock music, to let people know you live in a great township. This is one of the best, but you also live in one of the best counties in the United States. And when I'm on these boards now nationwide, they listen to us on the programs that we're doing instead of, when I first started, oh, wow, that's a good idea. And that's a good idea. Now they're saying to us, oh, wow, that's a good idea. So we really, I think, came up with these ideas because we work so well together. And I think my speech is going to be about how we worked well together, especially with all of the different agencies. That's what's really important.
I actually attended that about 3 years ago at the Iron Pigs, Phil, and it was great. It was well done.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I got my rock music already picked out,
You and Don Cunningham.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't lead a band, though. If I started singing, they'd throw me out real quick. But no. Well, thank you very much. And Armand, if you have your cards, okay, you'll please use him now. If there's a question on a grant or a program or.
Even with BP.
Just- No problem. Thank you. It's very nice to meet you. Executive Armstrong, thank you so much for visiting with us this evening. Thank you. Have a good evening. Okay, moving on to agenda item 7, ordinances. We have an ordinance of the Township of South Whitehall, County of Lehigh, Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, amending Part 1, Administrative Legislation, Chapter 17, Boards, Commissions, Councils, and Departments, Article 2, Park and Recreation Board of the Codified Ordinances of South Whitehall Township, to amend and restate in its entirety the Park and Recreation Board Ordinance of South Whitehall Township and providing for a repealer clause, severability clause, and effective date. And I will turn this over to our Township Manager, Tom Petrucci.
Thank you. This ordinance has been before the board several times now. It is ready for adoption. It was advertised in the Parkland Press and sent to the Lehigh County Law Department. So the ordinance, just to briefly summarize, confirms the advisory role of the Park and Recreation Board. Basically, it delineates the responsibilities of the Park and Recreation Board to advise the Board of Commissioners and Township Manager on public policy matters relating to the acquisition, development, organization, scheduling, maintenance, and operation of all park and recreational areas and associated facilities within the township. Authorizes the Park and Recreation Board to conduct periodic reviews of the existing recreational program of the township in relationship to the needs and desires of the citizens of the township. At the discretion of the Board of Commissioners and Township Manager, directs the Park and Recreation Board to study and report to both on the feasibility of proposed recreational programs to be conducted by the township or jointly by the township and the school district or other municipalities. Authorizes the Park and Recreation Board to make full and complete analysis, studies, reports to the board and or the township manager at such times as may be designated or requested by both, and also directs the Park and Recreation Manager to prepare a summary annual report of all activities and milestone accomplishments of the rec program of the township by November 1st of each year. And then in accordance with the requirements of Section 58011 of the First Class Township Code, would be forwarded to the Board of Commissioners no later than December 1st for your adoption.
Very good, Tom. Thank you. I just had a follow-up. I know that we've advertised this and sent it to the Lehigh County Law Department. Has there been any communication or feedback from the community?
There has not.
Nothing. Thank you. Are there any board questions or comments on this ordinance?
Yeah, I'll just repeat the comment I made when this came before us before. I think this is an excellent ordinance, and I think as we continue to review and clarify the roles of each of our advisory boards, I think this is a great model that we can use to apply to those other boards. So thank you, Tom, for your work on this, and the Township and Parks and Rec Board will benefit from it. So thank you.
Thank you.
Well said, Commissioner Roth. Other comments?
Yes, as I said at the last meeting, I think the staggered terms are great for continuity on the board. So I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Any other comments? Any public comment? Okay, hearing and seeing none, do I have a motion to approve said ordinance?
So moved.
I'll second. We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Moving on to agenda item 7B. We have for direction and discussion, a draft zoning ordinance amendment, section 350-42H, height exceptions. And I will ask our Township Planner of the Community Development Department, Greg Adams, to please present.
Thank you. This is your first look at this ordinance amendment. This is something that came to staff's attention a few months ago with a possible confusion over a section of our zoning ordinance related to the exceptions to the height, maximum height requirements specified in the zoning ordinance itself. We did notice this bit of confusion here, and we thought it would be good to correct and clarify what exactly this section is intended to mean. And I did highlight it here. The actual section under consideration is when attached to the roof of an existing or proposed building and not otherwise permitted as an accessory use, the height of the buildings, structures, or portions thereof shall not exceed 140% of the height of the principal building. That sounds like that could be measured either from grade or from the top of the roof because it's referring to the structures. So this is what we want to clarify. We believe as staff that this should be measured from grade. So we are not creating very tall buildings based on dormers or spires or belfries or anything like that. So we put together an amendment to fix that. And that's been included there. And as you can see on page 3 of 7, this is the current ordinance section that is to be amended. Pages 4 and 5 of 7 are the changes that we are requesting at this point. And the clean version begins on page 7 and goes to, page 6 and goes to page 7. And at this point, staff is just requesting some direction. If you feel that this is something that should be pursued, we're requesting that this go to Zader Law for legal review and then on to the Planning Commission for their review and comment.
Thank you, Greg. Aside from looking for the board's direction to send it to Zader Law, are you looking for our comments at this time, or will that happen after it's gone through legal and planning?
We'll take them now if you have them.
Okay, I just want to clarify for the board.
Yeah.
Are there any questions at this point, given this first draft, first look?
Just a comment, Greg. I did read this over the weekend, and I think the idea of clarifying any ambiguity would be beneficial for the township, not just now, but down the road. So I think it's a great start, and look forward to the future comments on this and once it's reviewed by everybody.
Thank you.
I would agree. And the only question that came to my mind initially when I read this draft was, will this one set of standard height be for all districts, or will it be more complementary based on the zoning height in a particular residential district as opposed to an industrial district or a commercial district? Will it be one for all township?
One for all. That's what it is now. And we think this works across the board. I mean, generally you're speaking, typically a 35-foot height requirement. In most districts, we have 2, the IC1 in the HC1 zoning districts that have up to 70 feet as the maximum height. And since those are commercial or industrial, those are would be the only places you would see that additional increase.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments at this time?
I have a question, a quick question. On page 1 at the bottom, it was stated that if there was a special exception, and correct me if I'm wrong, it would be capped, determined by the Public Safety Commission. So how would that play out? Would the applicant go to the zoning hearing board, and is that the be-all, end-all, or when would the Public Safety Commission review it?
The Public Safety Commission would review it first.
Okay.
This is because we're considering, for example, an antenna or a belfry, and if a repairman went up there and at the top was changing the light bulb at the very top and suffered a medical emergency, we would have to know, can our emergency services get to that person? And that would cap it throughout the township. So that would be the highest spot that the emergency services could reach. That would be the height limitation.
Okay.
And that would be written into the ordinance, and that would be the cap that the zoning hearing board could go up to, but no further than that.
Okay, thank you so much.
Any other board comment? Anything from the public?
I have a question for Greg, perhaps a comment. I've not read through this, but in glancing at it now, and this is not my legal review, but in glancing through it on page 5 of 7, if you do go to the zoning hearing board, it says the applicant shall provide engineered drawings of the proposed building or structure that includes the appurtenances. Should that also allow for architectural in the alternative to engineered?
I suppose it could.
Good point. Thank you, Attorney Zader. Any other comment from the board? Any from the public? At this point, do we need a motion to send this over? Okay, so is there a motion to,
Make a motion.
Second.
motion second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
And on to agenda item C, we have direction and discussion draft zoning ordinance amendment, add section 350-13F zoning certificate of use. And Greg Adams, if you would please present this item as well.
Okay, now I have the right one. This is another item that staff has come across recently. We've, over the past year or two or three, have learned the limitations of holding a certificate of occupancy to address certain things in the land development process or that may need to be taken care of before a business opens. In the past, we have basically used the certificate of occupancy as the final hammer. If something is not done according to the regulations, according to a resolution or anything like that, we hold on to the certificate of occupancy until those items are accomplished. But recently we've learned that the UCC basically states that once a building has been given its final approval, we have 5 days to issue the CO. So we can't hold that. And we need something more to address non-UCC related issues. So other municipalities have come up with something like this. It is a zoning certificate of use. And this basically confirms that whatever use is out there has a certificate that states basically it is in compliance with the zoning ordinance. So we looked at other municipalities, saw how they did this, and tailored this to our needs. So this is, once again, your first look at it. This is something that staff has gone through. We think this is good enough to at least to start the review process, and are requesting that, once again, this go to Zader Law and then on to the Planning Commission for their review and comment to return back to you in the future.
Very good, Greg. Thank you for bringing this to the board for our consideration to move it forward. Given your explanation, I think it's very timely to address the issues that you've laid out to us and for the township to have a mechanism to enforce. So thank you. Are there any board comments on this draft?
I have a question, Greg. So this is used concurrently with the CO? They're used together. It's not replacing it. Is that correct?
They are used together. They
Okay.
both do both separate but similar things.
Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion? Any from the public? Okay, hearing and seeing none, do I have a motion to advance this draft ordinance to Attorney Zader and the Planning Commission?
So moved.
I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you, Greg. Moving on to resolutions, agenda item 8A. We have a resolution of the Board of Commissioners of South Whitehall Township, Lehigh County, Pennsylvania, designating the officials authorized to execute documents and agreements and the project contract for Greenways, Trails, and Recreation Program Grant C000076556 Vistas Park Nature Play Improvements Project. I'll ask our Township Manager, Tom Petrucci, to assist.
Thank you. The township is the grantee for a Greenways, Trails, and Recreation Program grant that was awarded by the Commonwealth Financing Authority on April 21st, 2021, and is administered by the Commonwealth of PA Department of Community and Economic Development. The total grant award is $85,966.00. It's involved for Vistas Park nature play improvements. In the time period since the grant was awarded, the township has experienced personnel changes. As such, it is necessary to restate and confirm the designated officials authorized to execute documents and agreements for the above referenced grant. To confirm, the president of the Board of Commissioners and the township manager are the two officials that are authorized to sign grant agreements and documents. Long Range Planner Chris Stroller will be assigned as a project contact. This resolution effectuates all those changes.
Very good. Thank you, Tom. Any board comments or questions? Any from the public? Okay, hearing and seeing none, do I have a motion to approve said resolution?
Motion.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Moving on to agenda item 8B, we have a resolution extending the conditional preliminary final approval granted to a major plan entitled Proposed Parking Lot Improvements, 798 Houseman Road. And I will ask our planner at the Community Development Department, Greg Adams, to present.
Thank you. This is regarding an application to further develop property at 798 Houseman Road. The plan itself proposes the construction of a new driveway aisle and the elimination of 13 parking spaces, stormwater management improvements, and the installation of a new water line on the 0.81 acre portion of the 6.072 acre site. So basically, the applicant has received a preliminary final approval back in February 17th of 2021 with 12 conditions. Almost a year later, the Board of Commissioners granted a 12-month extension to that. They had progressed along fairly well, but still had items to accomplish. We are now at the end of that extension, and they have one major issue left to address, and that is the water line connection to the building. This was something that was included in the project, and it was hoped that the inclusion would give them a good reason to finish this up. This is a water line connection that was improperly done, and the township discovered this and has been working with the applicant fairly well to get this resolved. However, it has moved a little slowly, and since it is part of the package, this is what has to be done before they can actually record the plan and have the permits issued for the rest of the work. So they are asking for a 3-month extension. They are, I believe, here tonight, I hope, to give you a presentation on what needs to be done and hopefully answer any questions you have.
Thank you, Greg.
Fidel?
Good evening. I am Fidel Gonzalez with Langen Engineering. I am the civil engineer for the project. The summary provided by Mr. Adams definitely is very detailed, and the situation is primarily the water line, and we have been working on that over a year. And the reason it has been taking time was the initial solution that was agreed upon didn't offer an adequate solution. So we had to go to plan B. And right now we're in the midst of planning that secondary solution. And well, hopefully it will be done in a month. But we're asking for a 3-month extension.
Very good. Thank you. I'll open it up.
I'm sorry, you just said the plan B is you're working on a secondary solution.
Correct.
You don't have it yet?
No, there is a plan for the secondary solution. However, it's not been implemented.
Okay.
It requires construction and the construction of an insertion valve to the water line.
Okay, thank you.
Very good. Mr. Osborne.
Yeah, thank you. Can you help me understand, you mentioned that the first agreed upon solution didn't turn out to be a good enough solution, maybe. Can you explain what is the problem?
Yeah, so the problem is that the water main is not isolated to the building itself. Originally, this was part of a larger complex, and it was tied into the Diacon property. So when Lehigh Valley Health Network purchased the property, they weren't aware of that. So this water line needs to be disconnected because it's feeding both properties.
So would the network need to provide a lateral into the main?
There is a lateral off of it. What they need to do is sever the connecting main.
There were
So
two
it's
water
like
feeds.
it's like a loop, yeah.
Yeah.
And so they need to sever that. And what the initial agreed upon solution was to first just isolate it by the existing valves and see if through that analysis you can just turn off valves and isolate the building. Well, and through that analysis, there was a valve that wasn't holding. So that was plan A, minimal work in trying to isolate the building. So the next solution is to actually construct a new valve, insert a new valve in there.
Okay, it is a blind in the line part of that solution so that someone doesn't open that valve up accidentally.
Well, when the new valve is inserted, there is going to be a disconnection of the system between the two properties then.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you. So there'll be a distance where there is no piping.
Correct.
Got it. Thank you.
Any other board comment at this time? Okay. Do we have any public comment? Okay. Do we have a motion to proceed with?
Commissioner Kelly?
Yes.
Just something for the board to consider. This gentleman mentioned that he feels this solution can be performed in the next month. May I suggest for the board to consider that the extension would be a 1-month extension instead of 3?
I'll also ask our township manager if there's.
Tom, if I could say something.
That's Herb.
The only thing is, if you go to a month, Brad and the full board, sometimes these valves do take a little bit of time to get a company to install them. So a month might be holding them very tight.
What I think the intent would be to give a month to allow us to ensure that the work is secured, if the applicant's inclined to secure it, and to work out an arrangement with the applicant, and then come back next month at the March 1st meeting to give an additional extension of time once we have certain safeguards and protections in place from a legal and engineering standpoint.
Would that be an acceptable solution to you? Keep the
I mean,
project moving?
well, it's been a long process already dealing with the township. So, and my client is very agreeable. I mean, the water line wasn't even really part of this project, but the township felt that it was important to kind of put them together so that this solution would be solved. And I think, if that's the township's desire, the applicant's going to be okay with that. I think my personal opinion is we would, and this is speaking on just my personal opinion, that 3 months would allow us that leeway if something were to happen and it wasn't installed in a month.
Attorney Zader, do you have any comment on our township manager's suggestion?
I understand all the points have been made, and Fidel, I understand your comment as well. But I believe the point made by Township Manager Petrucci is that from the township's perspective, they are connected. The obligation for correcting the water line and the project for the parking lot expansion. And as of right now, there is no security in place with respect to the water line. And while we were all hopeful that the solutions that you're talking about, Plan B, is going to work and work promptly, Plan A hasn't worked out so far. So I think the idea with the 1-month extension is not necessarily to absolutely be certain that the water work is done in 1 month. We hope it is. But I think the township wants to have some additional protections built into perhaps the next resolution for time extension that aren't presently in existence in the current resolution for time extension. So if you understood what I said, the intent of Mr. Petrucci, I think, is clear. And to accommodate that, I think the 1 month is more appropriate than 3 months.
And applicant, would you be agreeable to the 1 month extension given the explanation by the township manager and our solicitor?
Yes.
So at this time, I would make a motion to grant a 1 month extension. Do I need to add anything to that motion, Attorney Zader?
I would say that in the resolution itself that has been presented to the board in the packet and has been accepted by the applicant through the acceptance of conditions form, at the bottom paragraph, bottom whereas clause on page 1, the 3-month period would be changed to 1 month, and the May 18 date would be changed to, I'll say, March 16th. And those same two changes would occur on page 2 in paragraph number 2, where it says 3 months and May 18, 2023 would again be changed to 1 week and, or sorry, 1 month and March 16th.
Very good. So a motion to extend 1 month with the additional language and corrections that Attorney Zader has delineated. So I will make that motion. Is there a second? Okay, any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0.
All right,
Thank you very much, Fidel. Moving on to resolution agenda item 8C. We have a resolution granting preliminary final approval to a minor plan entitled 1881 Penn's Crossing and 3768 Huckleberry Road. I will call on our planner, Greg Adams, to present.
Thank you. This is an application to adjust the lot line between 1881 Penn's Crossing and 3768 Huckleberry Road. The plan itself proposes the transfer of 63,729 square feet, which is approximately 1.4630 acres, of property from 3768 Huckleberry Road to 1881 Penn's Crossing. At December 15th, 2022 Planning Commission meeting, the Planning Commission reviewed and recommended preliminary final plan approval to the Board of Commissioners, subject to the applicant complying with 8 conditions. There were also 2 favorably recommended waiver/deferral requests. 3 conditions typical to the approving resolutions and the requirement to address the Township Water and Sewer Engineer letter have been added. 2 of the previous conditions coming out of Planning Commission have already been addressed and they've been removed. So with that, we have one from the applicant's team here to present the plan.
Good evening. I'm Matt Pooker. I'm the applicant. I'm my wife, Asla. So we own both the properties there, Huckleberry and Penn's Crossing, and we'd like to move the lot line instead of the December meeting, really for 2 reasons. One, I'd like to increase the impervious area I can build my home on. The additional acreage will allow me to do that per the NPDES form requirements. And also the other one, as a personal one, it's a great view up there. I'd like to be able to control my view. Right now, it's a straightforward plan, move the lot line. Bottom property is rural residential, leaving that an acre, which complies with the zoning.
Thank you. I'll just ask our township engineer if there were any recommendations that you needed to advise the board.
No, there was a clarification for the waiver that was recommended at the Planning Commission, just a clarification in the actual section that was on the plans, but it was recommended by the Planning Commission. We have no engineering objection. The other waiver is it's a deferral, actually. It is for the widening along Huckleberry Road, since it's only a small section, a couple 100 feet or so along Huckleberry Road. It doesn't make sense to widen the road for that 100 feet, come back in. If for some reason Huckleberry Road does get widened in the future, the deferrals there, the township could call in for the applicant to do that work. So besides that, we have very minor clarification comments for the plans. We can get these recorded if you choose to move forward.
Thank you very much, Tony.
Thank you.
Are there any board comments or questions on this resolution? Anything from the public? Okay, hearing and seeing none, do we have a motion to approve said resolution?
So moved.
Hello? Hello, can I be heard? This is Robert Hodges. I have a question.
Yes, we can hear you.
My question, the applicant just stated that changing this lot would allow him more impervious land up at the top of Penn's Crossing. My question is, how will this affect the drainage of water down towards the bottom of Penn Crossing? Because already all the building that's going on up at the top Penn Crossing has turned our backyard into a swamp. And I'm wondering how much worse is this going to make it?
Mr. Hodges and everyone, the increase of area is actually flows north away from Penn's Crossing and flows north away from that basin. There's a fixed amount of impervious area that can be built on that specific lot as designed by the MPDS permit. The other area flows north. If there's a large increase of whatever the applicant so chooses to put flowing north, going down towards Huckleberry Road, he would have to abide by all the rules and regulations of LVPC and MPDS in the township if he exceeds any threshold. So if there's a large pad put in, there might need to be basins and stormwater management put in that area. But as of right now, it won't change what flows into the existing development, if you will, that's was designed up there and being built now.
Is there any follow-up question, Mr. Hodges?
Yes, considering that what has happened to our backyard and when all plans for Penn's Crossing, what's the remedy in case unforeseen drainage problems occur from this or any other properties being built up there?
If I can chime in, so this is Ben Kutz with Gilmore and Associates. Been working with Matt Pucker on their behalf. We helped prepare this lot line adjustment plan. Rob, so I guess a couple thoughts. One is, so this is just a lot line adjustment. It really doesn't address any of those future improvements. As Tony, the township engineer, had mentioned, you know, we're in conversation with the conservation district. We will be with the township as well, and then LVPC will have to review this as well with whatever lot improvements get put in here, because there is an open NPDS permit. So, you know, whatever additional impervious beyond what's already allowed to the lot will have to be accounted for with additional stormwater management facilities that'll probably be located, you know, closer to the northern end of that property, outside of that Sunoco transmission line that kind of cuts through the middle of the lot there. Yeah, the design requirements that the township has and that the NPDS permit requires, you know, it essentially means that, you know, you have to manage the additional volume increase up to the 2-year and then the rate increase up to the 100-year. You know, he'll be compliant with that. You know, the lot grading plan will have to get approved by the township at the appropriate time as well.
And this is Dave Manhart, Director of Community Development. Also to chime in, we've been made aware of the water issues on the lower end of Penn's Crossing. I've reached out to Keystone Engineers, who's the engineer on the Hills of Winchester development, to look at some of the stormwater. Particularly, there's a detention basin at the top of the hill, and the swale are kind of highlighted items that we're going to investigate further to see if there's anything that either was installed wrong or may have happened with erosion or something that is causing the downhill water. So we're looking into it with the engineer on that project.
Are there any further comments at this time?
Just thank you very much for answering the questions.
Thank you, Mr. Hodges. Any other board comment or public comment at this time? Okay. Do we have a motion to proceed with said resolution?
Make a motion.
I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
I'm recusing myself.
Motion passes 4-0 with one recusal. Thank you. Moving on to agenda item D, we have a resolution of the Board of Commissioners of South Whitehall Township to submit an application to the Bureau of Justice Assistance, BJA, of the Office of Justice Programs, OJP, U.S. Department of Justice, DOJ, and Justice and Security Strategies, JSS, for a grant to replace body-worn cameras for the use of the South Whitehall Township Police Department. I will ask our Chief of Police, Glenn Dorney, to present.
Good evening, Commissioners. This is actually a follow-up to what we discussed at the last meeting. This is just the official request to have a resolution signed authorizing us to submit the grant. The grant work has been done. Lieutenant Dotter and Tom Petrucci and I have worked together to make sure that we have all of our ducks in a row to give the best product possible for hopefully consideration to receive this grant. And it will be, if approved tonight, it will be sent in tomorrow for the February 17th deadline. So the request is to give that authorization for this resolution to move forward.
Very good, Chief. Thank you for bringing this to the board for consideration, and thank you to staff, your officers and Township Manager for working on this. Are there any board comments on this resolution? Anything from the public? Hearing and seeing none, is there a motion to proceed with said resolution?
So moved.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chief Dorney. Moving on to agenda item E, we have a resolution appointing blank to the Parks and Recreation Board, and I will ask our Township Manager to present.
Thank you. Yes, there is currently one vacancy on the Park and Recreation Board. Mr. Matthew Peterson has submitted his application. The board did interview Mr. Peterson, and he is inclined to serve on the Park and Recreation Board. One thing I did note just now, since we've passed the Park and Recreation Board ordinance, the term should be staggered. So I believe if you do a 5-year term for Mr. Peterson, it would not, I have to look at it. I think it might not be consistent with those staggered terms. So if you are inclined to proceed with his appointment, it would need to be a staggered term.
Okay, very good. Thank you. I do remember interviewing Matthew Peterson. He presented very enthusiastically. He's an Eagle Scout, and he did mention that he had installed a free library, little library down at Grove Street Park. I was impressed with his passion for the outdoors and to serve his community. So I'm certainly in favor of nominating. I will make a motion to nominate Matthew Peterson.
I'll second that.
I would just like to comment on that. I was not a member of the board when Mr. Peterson was interviewed, but I did have the opportunity to review his application materials. I was particularly impressed by two things. One, he does appear to have extensive experience within our parks. He knows our park system well. He's utilized the facilities. So I think that if he is successfully appointed to the Parks and Rec Board, is something that he would definitely bring to the table. And the second, you mentioned it, Commissioner Kelly, Mr. Peterson is an Eagle Scout. And as an Eagle Scout myself, I was especially heartened to see in his letter of interest that he talked about how the values he learned during his time in the scouting program have really had an impact on him and his approach to his work, his approach to volunteerism. So I think that would definitely be an asset. I have also said this previously. I believe that the township should do whatever it takes to involve service organizations in our parks department. And I think the Boy Scouts is definitely one of those organizations that we should be reaching out to for involvement in Parks and Recreation programs, whether it's Eagle Scout projects, whether it's other volunteer projects. It's a great way to get a younger generation involved in our community. It does a service to the township and a service to those organizations. And I have no doubt that Mr. Peterson's experience in the Boy Scout program would make him an asset as the Parks and Recreation Board reviews potential plans or generates ideas to our Parks and Rec staff. So I would also be in agreement with appointing Mr. Matthew Peterson to the Parks and Rec Board.
Excellent. Any other board comment?
I do have a comment as well. I echo your sentiments, both Commissioner Roth and Commissioner Kelly. He interviewed exceptionally well. And what stuck with me is his saying that he wanted to leave it better than what he found it. That really stuck with me. And also the fact that the very next day he sent out a thank you for us taking the time to interview him. And I thought that was a very nice gesture, and it shows who he is. So I'm in favor of appointing him as well.
Thank you. There's no other board comment at this time. Any from the public? So there's a motion and a second on the floor. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. And I do want to thank Mr. Peterson for his willingness to serve our community. Thank you very much. Moving on to motions. Agenda item 9A, we have a motion to authorize the township manager to execute professional services agreement in the amount of $52,000 with A6A Associates LLC for public safety exercise. Project is funded by a $50,000 Commonwealth of Pennsylvania Community and Economic Assistance Program grant. I'll ask our township manager, Tom Petrucci, to please assist.
Thank you. The motion before you is to allow me to execute the professional services agreement. As noted, the township has received a $50,000 grant for a $52,000 professional services contract for a public safety exercise to be conducted later this year. Basically, the professional services agreement would incorporate all of the grant contractual requirements from the Commonwealth and to ensure that we're in compliance. For example, the non-discrimination clause, the contractor integrity provisions, as well as all required insurance requirements and indemnification requirements. After drafting this, I realized the solicitor had not had the opportunity to take a look at it. I've used this form in the past. I did send it over to Attorney Aldifer. She had a couple comments that really wouldn't change the intent of this agreement, but I would seek a motion to approve it subject to their final review to incorporate those changes.
Very good. Thank you, Tom. And thank you for sending this over for legal review for the board's consideration as well. Are there any comments or questions on this motion? Anything from the public? Hearing and seeing none, do we have a motion to proceed with said motion?
So moved.
I'll second. Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. On to agenda item 9B, we have a motion to proceed with the purchase of new doors at the Cedarbrook and Whitehall Huckleberry water stations. And I'll ask our township manager again to please present.
Thank you. Public Works is respectfully asking for a motion to approve the purchase of new doors and at the Cedarbrook water station and the Whitehall and Huckleberry water station. The double door and single door at Cedarbrook water station cost will be $7,348.60. This was budgeted for 2023 in the amount of $10,000. Whitehall and Huckleberry, the double door and single door will cost $7,348.60. And this was actually budgeted for 2023 for the amount of $25,000, leaving a balance of $17,651.40 for steel repair work that will be done later in the year. So I'd seek a motion to approve with those purchases.
Very good. Thank you, Tom. Are there any board comments or questions?
Oh, I just have a question, Tom, and maybe if Herb's online, he can maybe answer this. The 17,000 for steel repair work. If we didn't have the $17,000 differential, were we going to do the steel work anyways?
I believe so, yes.
Okay, so this is a benefit that we were able to come in
I believe that was the intent. And Herb, if you're on, correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, Dave, that was the intent. We did have $10,000 for the new Cedar Brook doors and 25,000 for the Whitehall and Huckleberry for the new doors and the steel framework to be completed this year.
Thank you, Herb.
Commissioner Osborne, did you have a comment? Nothing. Okay. Anything else? Any comments from the public? Hearing and seeing none, do we have a motion to proceed with said motion?
Motion.
I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Moving on to agenda item C, a motion to proceed with advertising for paving materials for the 2023 milling contract. And Tom, if you would assist.
Yes, the Public Works Department is requesting the approval to advertise the 2023 roadway milling bid. I will note that the Township's Municipal Services Representative, Kevin O'Donnell for PennDOT, has already approved these specifications. The bid specification was attached to the memo. On pages 14 through 17 are all the roads which we're requesting to have milled to allow then for resurfacing. As you'll note, they're very extensive. And all of the roads that are listed would be resurfaced by Public Works employees. So I'd like to highlight that fact. But we have more than enough budgeted out of the liquid fuels. So I'd respectfully request motion to approve the advertisement.
Excellent. Thank you. I appreciate you noting that our Public Works staff would be doing this work. They did a great deal of milling and paving last year, and I heard multiple positive comments, gratitude from the community for the work that they did. So I thank our operations, Herb Bender, for his oversight of the Public Works Department and for all of the workers who have helped with that project. We look forward to them taking care of all of these streets in this year. Are there any board comments or questions? Anything from the public? Hearing and seeing none, do I have a motion to proceed to approve this motion?
So moved.
I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Thank you. Moving on to agenda item D, we have a field contract for door camera access with Thiel Strategic Communications, and our Township Police Chief Glenn Dorney will present.
Am I doing it or are you? Okay. You want to take it?
Sure. All right. This is essentially a contract to manage and support the control access to the building, our cameras. It's through a Genetec platform, and it is a very intricate system, as you can imagine. It essentially has to be touched for every single door in the building to give fob access to get in and out, a scheduler to make sure that the doors open and close during business hours and that they're closed during holidays and things like that. And it is a very, very important, crucial part of the police department when it comes down to our cameras in cells, our access into the building for accreditation, as well as interview rooms and everything that we need to do. If there is a failure, we need to have somebody essentially contracted to be able to fix it and make sure we can recover any data if it is there and it's lost. And we, quite frankly, cannot do this in-house, and we need to have somebody on board. We have done our due diligence over the last year. This is a lengthy process that we have had discussions with CSI, which is now Keystone Fire Services. They had done the renovation, and we had previously worked with them. We interviewed and met with the wire guys. However, they do not do the Genetec system, which is already in place. And if we were to switch to the wire guys, we would have to go to an entirely new system that would cost probably in excess of a couple $100,000. And I don't think that is a reasonable solution to what we're looking at. So we reached out to other vendors in the area. We've had some experience with Johnson Controls and also Thiel Strategic, who is local, who used to be one of the main folks involved with CSI back in the day, and then he branched out to his own company. I've had personal relationships with Charlie Thiel, who was the principal owner of Thiel Strategic. He was essentially in charge of the entire City of Allentown program with the 200 plus city cameras, as well as access controls to City Hall, the police department, and all city-owned structures in the city. They did a fantastic job, and his focus is on the service aspect of it rather than sales. He doesn't care who you buy products from. He's about the service and the solution to your what your needs are within your structure. So with that in mind, his rates are also cheaper than what we're currently paying with CSI. So it would be a pretty hefty savings for the township. And I'm confident that this contract with Thiel Strategic will be a proper solution for what the township needs right now.
Thank you, Chief Zorni. Excuse me. Are there any board comments or questions?
Yeah, I have a couple comments. I brought this up to your attention last night, Chief, as you know. There seems to be a problem with CSI/Keystone, from what I understand.
We're not recommending going with CSI. I'll say that.
But we're with them now.
We don't have a contract, no.
Okay, but they've been not responsive, or?
We've had some issues.
Okay. I guess my question, and if we have issues, have we called them in and read them the Riot Act and had this resolved? Because it sounds like we haven't.
Oh, we have.
If we have, then why aren't we getting response? I mean, as a vendor to the township.
We have. We would like to close out all of the undone, unfinished products with them and move forward with a better solution.
And then you said you also talked to other vendors, but have we gotten responses from other vendors?
Yes, we
got an RFP on this, or?
Well, we did not do an RFP. We've met with, like I said, the wire guys. There's only so many vendors in the area that do this, and the wire guys we'd have to change our entire system.
I'm talking without changing the system.
And I can, Johnson Controls, I believe Tom could probably speak more to Johnson Controls.
Yeah, Johnson Controls, in my past experience, has had issues with customer service. For example, their base on-site fees is substantial, several $100s just to come on site. So I would not recommend that we utilize that firm for this purpose.
And they're the only ones around?
Well, there's a limited number of firms that are qualified to handle the Genetec system.
Okay.
In the area.
And is this going to be a contract for extended period or what? I think
in the interim from earlier today, we actually were able to work it out with Thiel where they would do this work without a contract, and that's what we're recommending, so that we have flexibility to gauge the level of their service, and then have to be able to come back at a later date if we need to reevaluate. So effectively, we'll have the service in place so that we can proceed as necessary, but then also have the flexibility to change if we have to.
Okay. Just want to make a comment though, Chief. You made a comment that Charlie doesn't care about the sale or where you buy the equipment. It's just the service. Nobody cares where you buy the razor. It's where you buy the razor blades. It's the continuation of the razor blades that is the money.
Yeah, no, he provides the support. He doesn't care what kind of cameras you have or who you buy them from. He can facilitate that, but that's not he's not a salesperson. He does not sell the product.
I've known Charlie for years.
Yep. Okay.
So just to clarify, we're going to be paying hourly for whatever services the township may need. And will there be parameters around the number of hours per month, or how will that be monitored by the township?
Yeah, we would only do it as needed, and we would try to stay within the 6-hour limit set forth in what was going to be the contract.
6 hours per month.
6 hours per month.
Okay. Thank you. Any other? Yes, Commissioner Osborne.
Thank you, Commissioner Kelly. Chief or Tom, Chief, you may know better for this question. How old is the equipment that we're referring to?
Well, many of the cameras are actually repurposed from the renovation prior to this. And this is where during the renovation, we had some issues and some reassurances that the equipment did not need to be updated during the renovation. However, once we were in, many of the cameras failed and we were told they were at end of life. Therefore, should have been replaced during the renovation, but were not done so in the master plan. So it was, things should have been done that were not done. I will say that.
You got to the root of my question. Thank you.
Yes.
So just a follow-up to that, looking forward into the future, is this something that the township can begin looking at grants to potentially upgrade our cameras to something more up to date
we could look
and
to see
more
what's out there.
effective and efficient overall?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments from the board? Any from the public? Okay, do we have a motion to proceed with the field contract? I'll make that motion. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Thank you, Chief. Moving on to agenda item E, Police Department Collective Bargaining Unit Memorandum of Understanding Approval. And Tom Petrucci, please, if you'd present.
Thank you. So for consideration of the board is a draft memorandum of understanding that was negotiated between the township and the South Whitehall Township Police Bargaining Unit, the union. So basically, to summarize this MOU, the current collective bargaining agreement provides for a wage rate through which officers hired after January 1st, 2016 progress. Following appointment as a township police officer, an officer obtains a step increase after the completion of each subsequent year, ending at reaching full maximum patrol rate after the completion of 5 years of service as a township police officer. As of late, the township has experienced issues with recruiting due to increased competition for new entry-level officers. To allow for more flexibility in and hopefully recruiting officers that have previous qualified law enforcement experience through the Municipal Police Officers Education and Training Commission, otherwise known as MOPEC Academy. The township and the union are recommending this MOU, which would allow the officer to progress for salary purposes only to the for example, if they have 3 years of experience as a MOPEC police officer, they would have the salary rate of the 3-year officer, as opposed to starting at year 1 on our CBA. I'd want to point out that this does not apply to any other provision, including seniority and longevity. So it's only for salary purposes only, as clarified in the MOU. The MOU has been reviewed by the Labor Council of the Township, as well as the Legal Counsel of the Union. The MOU provides for a sunset date to allow us to come back to this issue and work out any issues. It would be the later date of when it's executed, or February 1st. So in this case, we're already past that. So it would be whenever it's executed, 1 year from that date. If the board is inclined to approve it, I'd seek a motion to allow me to sign it on behalf of the Board of Commissioners.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you for bringing this for our consideration. As you mentioned, I know that Chief Dorney would appreciate the help with recruitment as we continue the hiring process here in the township. So I'm certainly in favor of this. Are there any board questions or comments?
The question, just to clarify, so the sunset of this MOU, that means that we'll be able to revisit it at the end of the year and possibly extend it depending on how things go.
Yes, the sunset provision would require us to revisit it because it would revert back to the original terms of the CBA unless you extend this.
Thank you.
If there's no other questions, I'll make a motion to proceed with the MOU.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to agenda item 10, correspondence and information. I'll ask our township manager to update.
Thank you. Would like to report the upcoming meetings. Thursday, February 16th, 7:30 p.m. Tomorrow night is the Planning Commission meeting. Tuesday, February 21st, 6 p.m. is Crime Watch meeting. Wednesday, February 22nd, 7 p.m. is the Zoning Hearing Board meeting. Monday, February 27th, 10 a.m. is the Landscape Shade Tree Commission. And Monday, February 27th, 6 p.m. is Green Advisory Council. Dave, for the meeting, for the zoning hearing board on the 22nd, is that still proceeding?
I believe it has been canceled.
Okay. All right. So that is, scratch that one off the list.
Okay. And as always, check the township website for the most up-to-date meeting schedules. Thank you, Tom. Moving on to agenda item 11, old business. First is Where's Dam? And Tom, do you have an update for us?
Yes. On behalf of Herb Bender, I'd like to report that the project is almost completed. And some work will be conducted in the spring to finish up the project by Public Works. Public Works is seeking to conduct that work under the current DEP permit so as not to have to go back to DEP and apply for a separate permit. So we should have this project completely closed out in the next few months.
Excellent. That is excellent news. Thank you for that update. We've been waiting a long time. This township has to.
Yeah, and I'd like to say thank you to Herb. Without his guidance on this project, it would not have gone as well as it has. So thank you, Herb.
Yes, thank you, Herb. If you're still on the line, we appreciate all of your diligent work to bring this project to fruition. I want to thank all staff involved. I know it was a long haul. We've had it on our agenda for many years. Is this something we'll keep on our agenda, or do you recommend, Tom, that we would remove it and update in?
I recommend we remove it and then update you in the spring.
That's good. Very good. Any other board comment? Anything from the public? Okay, moving on to agenda item B, comprehensive plan update. I'll ask our Director of Community Development, Dave Manhart, to give us an update.
Yes, so comprehensive plan update, we're getting very, very close. We've closed the 45-day public comment period. We received comments from LVPC and Upper Macungie. We didn't receive any comment from other municipalities, school district. We received a number of online comments. We have cataloged all of those comments and made corresponding edits to the document. That has been submitted to the Planning Commission for tomorrow night's meeting. We're going to review that with the Planning Commission and hopefully get a motion to forward that on to the BOC. Based on that motion, we'll have to figure out the notice requirements for the public hearing. But it could be, I think, March, the second meeting in March is what we're targeting. So it's looking good, and I'm hoping we can take this off the agenda. No, I actually, with regards to that, at some point, we'll transition to an implementation update so that we can start talking about all of our implementation stuff that's just kind of waiting in the wings.
Excellent. Dave, thank you for that update. Thank you and Greg and all staff involved. I know that the comp plan has been underway since before COVID, and an awful lot of work and hours and meetings have been put into that. So thank you all for your diligent work. I'm happy to hear that the community engaged and sent comments in. I'm looking forward to reading those as we review that tomorrow with planning. Are there any board comments or discussion at this time? Any from the public? Very good. So at this point, we might be able to take this off the agenda as well and then wait for implementation. Excellent.
Yeah.
Very good. Moving on to agenda item 12, direction discussion. Item A, 2023 Lehigh County Conservation District Environthon event, April 25th and 27th. I'll ask Tom Petrucci to update us on this exciting opportunity.
Thank you. Yes, I'd like to update the Board of Commissioners on this event, as well as extend an invitation for you to attend. The Lehigh County Conservation District would like to hold their 2023 Environthon event at Covered Bridge Park in the township. The event is scheduled for April 25th at 8:30 a.m. to 4 p.m. and April 27th, 8:30 a.m. to 4 p.m. Just so you're aware, the Environthon is a program that educates high school and middle school students in natural resources and environmental sciences, while providing students with the knowledge and tools necessary to address the natural resource challenges facing today's world. It's actually a team competition where students will compete for scholarships and prizes. The township did hold a planning logistical meeting on February 2nd, 2023. Attendees included myself, Chief Dorney, Park and Recreation Manager Lynn Matula, and Long Range Planner Chris Stroller. Also from the district was Laura Hopek and Kevin Frederick. So just to let you know, I provided you a summary of the event. All three pavilions would be reserved for Covered Bridge Park. There would be about 125 to 200 attendees anticipated for both events each day. There's some logistical items that need to be worked out, including the parking plan to ensure that buses don't go over Weir's Bridge. And we will also have to have marked off areas for the buses. There will be a nurse on site. The Fish and Boat Commission will be there to facilitate in-stream education for participants. Child abuse clearances are the responsibility of the Conservation District, as the township is merely facilitating the event, not actually running it. They will have to provide a certificate of insurance to the township. We will do a sweep of Jordan Creek to ensure there are no safety hazards, like for example, hooks or errant fishing line. The township will be able to take an MS4 educational credit for this event, which is very important. So as we conduct our annual report, which is due September 30th, we can add that for this activity. We don't believe a emergency action plan is required due to the estimated number of participants. And the police department will be at the event, and the event is rain and shine. I wanted to make sure the board doesn't have any issues with this event before going any further, and also, assuming you don't have any issues, to make sure you're aware of it.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you for this memo. I appreciate you updating us on the conversation and background information from the meeting. It's very helpful. I just had a question on the competition. Are they only Parkland students who will be attending, or is this going to be more out of the area?
I'm happy to weigh in a little bit. Chris Stroller, Long Range Planner. I'll say, having been tangentially involved in this competition in the past as a former board member of the Conservation District, and actually in my previous role at Wildlands Conservancy, we did host this event for close to 20 years. First off, thank you to the board for their consideration in hosting this event. I think it's an honor to have it here in South Whitehall, and I can say the district has done a great job for many years, and it's a wonderful event. It is the any participating schools in the Lehigh County school districts. So I know Parkland has been involved and has been very successful in the past, so we're going to be rooting them on again. East Penn School District usually competes, I believe Salisbury Township in the past, and I'm not sure, maybe Southern Lehigh as well. So we're hoping to see a number of school districts, and I think the transition to a location like Covered Bridge Park is to actually have more space available for more schools to come. I think they've actually grown significantly over the past several years so that they are attracting more schools, and this is the regional competition. So the winning school from this will have a chance to compete at the state level.
Excellent. Thank you for that information. It's certainly very exciting. So thank you. Any other comments? Well, any from the public? Is it the pleasure of the board to agree to this? Yes. Everybody's nodding their heads. Yes. Okay. Very exciting event. So we look forward to further updates and for joining you on that day.
Thank you to the board.
Thank you. Moving on to agenda item B, the February 6, 2023 Pension Committee meeting summary. And I'll ask our Township Manager again to present.
Thank you. Yes, the Pension Committee met on February 6th. Of that meeting, I'll just give you a full, a summarized key bullet point list of the highlights. So Finance Director Tricia Dicker and I are pleased to report that the Township has already met its obligation for funding the defined contribution pension plans for Office and Public Works. based upon a review of the actual compensation of the relevant plan participants. $162,150.70 in defined contributions were required for 2022. The township already prepaid a total of $169,538. So factoring in forfeiture funds, the township will actually receive back $31,495.77, which would be deposited into the general fund. We reviewed the Girard Pension Services performance report. Commissioner Osborne had asked for a benchmarking comparison from what the index funds were supposed to have done, or what they were projected to do. Last year was a difficult year. Each of our plans respectively are down about 17%. However, that was pretty much in line with the benchmarking. So it was a bad year across the board. To that effect, the next actuarial evaluation will be calculated as of 1/1/23 with those lower numbers factored in. So our MMO will have to potentially go up. So we will have to, from an actuarial standpoint, look at some tools that are available to us, such as smoothing and so forth. But we won't have that for approval at this point quite yet. But we do have some options, which we'll probably have to come back to you in the spring. That's pretty much it. Any questions?
Any board questions? Nothing? No. So Tom, I want to thank our finance director, Tricia Dickert, Commissioner Kennedy and Osborne for serving on the pension committee, and all who have been involved in this. Thank you for this update, keeping us informed. Moving on to agenda item C, we have the South Whitehall Township appointment policy for citizen advisory boards. And Tom, call on you again.
Yes. So the Board of Commissioners adopted the advisory board appointment policy during its Wednesday, February 1st, 2023 public regular meeting. The first interview to take place after the adoption of the policy occurred on Monday, February 6th, 2023. Following this interview, I wanted to request the feedback of the board as to whether you felt any aspect of the policy needs to be revised or amended as a result of that meeting.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you for bringing this agenda item to the board for discussion and consideration. I'll open it to the floor. Commissioners have any comments?
I do. Thank you, Tom, for bringing this back to us. I think one of the important roles we have as commissioners is not just to implement policy, but to review policy and to see what's working, what's not, and what needs revision. So after we conducted our first interview with this policy in place last week, I went through the policy line by line, and I found two sections that I believe are potentially inconsistent with the way that this board does business, and certainly the way that we would hope that our citizen boards do business as well. One of the things that I believe makes our board of 5 work so well is that we are 5 individual members, each with an equal voice and an equal responsibility. We elect board officers, a president, a vice president, and an assistant secretary. But there is the understanding, not just through township policies, but also an understanding between members of the Board of Commissioners that the role of, say, the board president is to run the meetings, run them effectively, and coordinate with township staff when necessary to ensure that the meetings are run well. And I'm just speaking for myself. I know this is how I would like to see our volunteer boards and commissions run as well. Obviously, per township ordinance, a lot of them elect their own officers, and those officers serve a very similar function to the Board of Commissioners. So there are 2 provisions in this resolution that concern the chairperson of each citizen board. The first is section 4, subsection C. basically outlining the fact that commissioners may seek recommendations from current chairpersons and secretaries of the relevant citizen boards with respect to appointments to the boards, as well as Section 5, subsection D, inviting the chairperson of each citizen board to attend the interviews, ask questions, make recommendations, and provide feedback. I believe that those two provisions are inconsistent with what I previously mentioned, making sure that each member of our citizen boards, just as each member of the Board of Commissioners, has an equal voice. So I believe that it's my personal opinion that we should strike those two sections from this resolution, or at least direct the township manager to do so. That's not to say that either the chairperson or members of our citizen boards don't have the opportunity to provide feedback. They do. Before we make an appointment to our citizen boards, individuals are required to come before us and interview. Those interviews are live streamed to the public, so they can be interviewed by any member of the public, which includes any member or officer of our citizen boards. And when we appoint individuals to our citizen boards, it's done in public session by resolution. And there's also a time of public comment before we take that action. So keeping that in mind and emphasizing that not only should every current member of our citizen advisory boards have an equal opportunity and an equal say in the decisions that we make as a board, I also believe that every citizen of South Whitehall should have an equal opportunity to make their voices heard, and that no one should have the ability to exert a larger amount of influence on the process, just as neither one of us five has the power to exert any special power or influence over the other commissioners. So I'm interested to hear the thoughts of my colleagues, but following a conversation, I would certainly make a motion to direct our township manager to come back to us with a version with those two provisions stricken. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Roth.
I do have some questions.
Oh, go ahead.
Just more of a comment, just do very quick. Well said, Jacob, thank you. Just to reiterate that the appointments to the citizens boards are by the BOC. We make that appointment. And then your comment, and I concur totally, is public comment is open to any individual of the township. However, that does not mean that they're inviting to ask questions of the people being interviewed for citizens board. So that should be very clear. And public comment is just that. They can make a comment, but it's not to ask interview questions of an individual before the BOC for a vacancy.
Correct, because that authority lies exclusively with us.
The appointment of those individuals are with the BOC. And I think that needs to be pointed out, and I think that should be spelled out very, very clearly in the comments on this
Advisory
on the individual. I spent 25 years on public safety, and I can tell you that that is one individual or one committee that has always run very smoothly with township personnel there and electing a chairperson and a vice chair, and it's always been very smooth. And it's the way I wish I could see all boards run that way. Thank you.
Yeah.
I do have a comment as well, and I just wanted to clarify with you, Commissioner Roth. Are you saying that public comment should be allowed in the chat box, or would they be allowed to speak during the interview process? What are you saying, or is that taken out completely?
What I'm saying, or what I'm suggesting, is that during, there's two meetings concerning appointments to our citizen boards. There's the interview, and then there is the regularly advertised and scheduled public meeting where we actually make an appointment. During that regular public meeting, I would definitely encourage public comment by anyone, any member of the citizen board, any member of the public. During the interview, though, I believe it's appropriate, and this is certainly a practice that's been used in the past. But the questions should come from the members of the Board of Commissioners exclusively.
Okay.
We're the ones that have to evaluate the candidates. We're the ones that receive the applications. That's our role, but certainly the public should have the opportunity to comment in a public meeting before any action is taken. Absolutely.
All right, we're on the same page. I agree with that as well. I think also during the interview process, everything should be muted. With the last interview, there was a lot of noise during the Pledge of Allegiance. It was distracting. So I really feel that during that interview process, out of respect for the person who is interviewing and out of respect for us as the interviewers, it needs to be quiet and the focus should be on the interview process itself. I would also say that I would welcome any kind of feedback from any kind of board chair. But I don't feel that the board chair should be an active part of the interview process. I don't feel that they should question. We were elected by the public. The public trusts us to make those decisions, and I think we've done a really good job with our interview process. I think we've asked really good comprehensive questions, and I have a lot of faith in my fellow board members. And I believe that that is our duty to the public.
Thank you, Commissioner Hodges. Just as a follow-up, I'm going to just ask our township manager. So our interview meetings are a public meeting, and part of that agenda will always be an opportunity for public comment.
Correct.
From the public. So that's something that would be built into any interview meeting that we hold.
Correct.
Publicly. Okay.
Yeah, similar to your current process for 5 minutes per each speaker.
Okay.
Just a point of clarification. What I was suggesting was not ending public comment. It's allowing for public comment, but not allowing the direct questioning of candidates by members of the public.
Correct.
That has the potential to create an interview that drags out or could become unruly or disorganized. It should be conducted the same way that the Board of Commissioners would conduct an interview, say, for a township manager. The Board of Commissioners ask questions. The difference with this being because it's one of our citizen advisory boards, it should be conducted in the public to allow the public to attend and see, how we're conducting our business and to listen to the questions we're asking and to listen to the responses of volunteers.
Absolutely.
And if I may add, it shouldn't become confrontational.
Any other board comment? Commissioner Osborne?
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Roth. It was very, very thoughtful, the thought you put into it. I do have a question, and I apologize for this. I actually thought I had a paper copy of the policy. I don't have that with me. I don't see it as part of the agenda. Is there any way for us to put up that? Oh, thank you. Okay. So I just want to make sure I understand, Commissioner Roth, what you're, oh, this is yours, isn't it? Okay. So you want to strike 4C.
I believe he said.
Recommendation may be sought. Okay, so we're not seeking recommendations from any advisory board member.
My
Want to
opinion
strike
would be
that?
they are welcome to provide their thoughts via public comment, via email to us as commissioners. But I don't know if it's appropriate for us to say, well, as part of our decision-making process, we're going to specifically seek input. We're going to rely or take the initiative on the part of ourselves to reach out to those individuals.
Okay.
They're members of the public. They're willing to comment just as anyone else would. Not necessarily that it's on us as board members to reach out and seek that input. Input is always welcome.
Okay. Oh, thank you. So, and the other one is 5D. You want to strike that. What portion of 5D is is your target, if I may ask?
Would you mind passing that
Yeah.
document back?
And the
I made
reason
notes on there and I.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Can we put that up on the screen?
Yeah, so I will read 5D. So
The last sentence in 5D, to me, doesn't seem objectionable at all. In fact, it's
correct. So section 5 is interviews. Subsection D reads as follows. The appointed chairperson of each citizen board at the time the interviews are conducted by the Board of Commissioners shall be invited to attend any scheduled special meetings for conducting interviews and will be asked to provide recommendations and feedback on the candidates. The participation of the chairperson at scheduled special meetings shall not be required. The Board of Commissioners shall retain the sole decision-making authority regarding any and all appointments to citizen boards. So that last sentence I'm not objecting to.
Yeah.
That last sentence clarifies the previous 2 or 3 sentences. So what I'm just suggesting is getting rid of that provision altogether.
probably have more questions, but I don't want to ask you to keep passing your thing back and forth. I guess my overall question would be, Tom, do you have enough information to present another draft to the board, let's say in our next meeting?
Yes.
Okay, and that way I could ask my questions, based on what we see as a draft next time.
Yep.
Okay. So this is a change actually from the past, because I remember in our meetings, it was actually mentioned by one of the commissioners that this was just documentation of what we've done for a long time. So, and I agree with you, it's always good to revisit policy. It's interesting to me that we just put in writing something that was mentioned that this is the way we've done it, and one meeting later, we want to change it. I think that's fine. I just want to make sure that we're not cleansing out of that document something that is still worthy to hang on to, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. I
mean,
appreciate
an interview, an interview is a two-way process.
Mm-hmm.
Just we were unsuccessful in getting the applicant to remain in the process for the alternate position for the zoning hearing board. Let's just be upfront about it. But I don't see that as a failure of the process, because what I do see it as is an interview is a two-way street. And what occurred during that meeting, in my view, is exactly what an interview should be. Is the applicant truly interested in the position after going through that process? In this case, the applicant wasn't. The process worked. It was, it was messy. But I just want to make sure that we're not overcorrecting. That's all. Because I do really welcome input from volunteer board members who have a lot of experience, who may have some thoughts they'd like to share with us. I think what you're saying is you still would like to be able to receive those comments. It's just not going to be verbally given to us verbally in a meeting. Is that it?
During
the interview?
During the interview, certainly during a public comment portion of an interview meeting, which is required to be listed on the agenda, as well as public comment during a board meeting before action is taken by the board. What I am not comfortable with is the participation of one member of the advisory board in the interview process, essentially elevating that person above all the other members of that advisory board and other members of the public. And since, thank you for bringing up the fact that unfortunately we did hold an interview last week for an alternate position on the zoning hearing board, and the individual who interviewed chose to withdraw his name from consideration. And part of the reason why that happened was we conducted an interview as an interview is conducted. We each asked questions to assess the candidate's impartiality, knowledge of the issues, experiences, whether or not we thought this person would be a good fit for our advisory board. And we went through that, and the candidate gave his answers. And then, of course, we turn to the chairperson of that particular board to ask questions. But instead of asking questions, unfortunately, the chairperson of that board took the opportunity to lambast the individual, question their impartiality or their knowledge of the issues, took it upon himself to attack this board and our intentions, and really conduct himself in a way that was very unbecoming of any public servant. So that's the problem. And I get that, this may have been mentioned in that interview, but that's the way it's always been done, where the chair of a particular board, in this case it was zoning hearing board, was given the opportunity to participate, provide input, and potentially even guide the Board of Commissioners in their decision as to who they would appoint to that particular board. I don't believe just because that's the practice we've been using for so long that it's a good practice. I think that this board, I'm an appointed member of the board, but the four of you were elected. You were elected to make positive structural changes in South Whitehall, to make sure that South Whitehall government functions effectively, that it's more reflective of its citizens, and that we're not repeating the same ineffective, potentially dangerous practices of the past. So I think that allowing the Board of Commissioners, elected by the public, to make the decision as to who we put on our citizen boards, and not allowing current members of those citizen boards appointed in years past to put their thumb on the scale in that decisions, is one of the ways that we can fairly work on making improvements to this government. So again, just because we've been doing something for a long time, that doesn't necessarily mean it's the best practice. And I think that's, I certainly hope that's a sentiment that you all share. So with respect to these changes, I really didn't want to have to go into the details of what happened at the interview last week. It was very saddening to me that a public interview, somebody putting themselves forward to volunteer, right, without pay, purely based on their interest as a citizen, someone interested in township affairs, the fact that that person would be essentially bullied out of volunteering for consideration, that's really sad. That is really sad. And no citizen of this township should ever be treated that way, ever. So yes, we are making a change after one scenario. But if you have a scenario that unfortunate, and the potential where if we don't take action, we say to citizens that, hey, if you step up, if you volunteer, there's a chance you may be treated that way. How are we ever supposed to attract good applicants to apply for our boards? So yes, we're making it potentially a change after just one incident. But sometimes when something happens, you need to take action and you need to make sure the process runs smoothly. I want this process to run smoothly. I want to make sure that all those vacancies that we list at every single one of our meetings get filled in a timely fashion, that we're injecting new and diverse voices onto our boards, and that making sure that what the people of South Whitehall want, why they put you on this dais, can then trickle down and be reflected in these citizen advisory boards. The township will benefit from it.
So your proposed changes, would the township manager still have the ability to participate? Or is that stricken as well?
That's up to the board. My personal view is that the township manager is primarily tasked with working with these boards as our representative, right? We appoint the township manager to work with the staff who work with these respective boards. I have no feelings either way about whether the township manager should be involved, but the township manager functions in a role. They're not a member of our citizen advisory boards. They're not, say, your typical resident, right, coming to a meeting. They are essentially an extension of the Board of Commissioners. So that's the role the township manager plays.
To be specific, and I'm sorry if I had the document in front of me, I could be, but there is a section, and my question is, in what you discussed with us, did you strike that paragraph as well? Because I just don't know.
Yeah, I did not.
I
did not. It's certainly something this board can discuss.
Okay, no,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But the changes, when I reviewed this policy line by line after last week's meeting, my thought process was identify the problem, what went wrong, identify a possible solution, find that solution within the policies that guide this board, and then raise them for discussion.
Excellent.
I don't want to drag this out, but I just have two quick comments, please. Okay, Commissioner Robinson, you're the one that brought up the word messy. That interview was disgraceful and disrespectful. And second of all, Commissioner Roth, you brought up new and new voices and new people on the in the township. You're a welcome new relief to this township. Thank you.
Commissioner Roth, well said. I concur with everything that you said, and I will not restate, but I will simply refocus us to the last line in paragraph 9 that Commissioner Osborne asked if we would retain. The Board of Commissioners shall retain the sole decision-making authority regarding any and all appointments to citizen boards. It has always been the Board of Commissioners' sole decision-making authority to appoint to boards, and I appreciate the edits that you recommended to this policy, and I strongly concur with your suggestions.
We have somebody online that would like to speak on this topic.
Are there any more board comments before we? Nothing? Okay.
I just want to make sure that no one in the audience there wishes to speak first.
Well, that's okay. We'll have time for public comment. That's fine.
Okay, Robert Hodges, 1707 Penn's Crossing. I have a prepared statement that I wrote about the events during that meeting I'd like to read. During every Board of Commissioner meeting, the vacancies on the various township boards are announced. For a while now, it has been announced that there are 3 alternate positions open for the Zoning Hearing Board. After witnessing what occurred last week during the interview of a citizen interested in filling one of those positions, it's no wonder that the township is having trouble filling those vacancies. I joined the go-to meeting on Monday, February 6th to observe the interview of the applicant, a citizen who put himself forward as a candidate for the open position. It is my understanding that these interviews are open to the public for them to observe, but not to participate. Only the commissioners and the township manager are supposed to be asking questions. No one in the public should be speaking. And yet during this meeting, a member of the public, also joining the meeting virtually, broke all protocol and decency, attacking the applicant by questioning his motives for seeking the position and whether or not he had an agenda. My understanding is that the person asking these pointed questions, and that's been confirmed tonight, is the chairperson of the zoning board, which the applicant was interviewing for. But for the purposes of this interview, as he is not a commissioner, he was, in fact, a member of the public. Only commissioners and township managers and the township manager are supposed to be asking questions, not members of the public. It is one thing for commissioners to privately get input and opinions from committee chairpersons if the commissioners choose to do so, but it is completely different and inappropriate if said chairperson bullies his way into the meeting and disrupts it in such a way as to make a mockery of the process. He was constantly interrupting when the applicant was attempting to answer questions. He was speaking over the president of the board when she was making comments, and was even speaking over the Pledge of Allegiance. It is no surprise that the applicant withdrew his application for the position after being subject to this abuse. Why would he want to serve with someone who was treating him so poorly? And it makes me wonder, was the chairperson in question the one with the agenda, an agenda of trying to keep the applicant, a well-known citizen advocate who for years has fought for the good of South Whitehall, off the zoning board? People volunteering for these important boards should be treated with respect and consideration as they go through the process of determining if they are qualified for the position. What occurred on February 6th was the exact opposite of that, and it should never be allowed to happen again. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comment, Mr. Hodges. Is there anyone else online, Dave, who wished to comment? Is there anyone in the public? Sure, if you'd please come up to the microphone. Give us your name and address, please.
Manley Offutt, 1991 Molinaro Drive. I'm a little confused by the word advisory. Not all of your citizen boards are advisory. Is this only the advisory boards that you're changing this for, or is this for all of the boards?
That is actually our mistake. The resolution, we refer to them as citizen boards. It encompasses advisory boards, planning,
Committees.
parks, committees, as well as quasi-judicial boards, zoning, hearing, building code of appeals, fire code of appeals, that sort of thing.
So under advisory, you're including all of those?
Yes. And maybe we should, but I will try not to use the word advisory when talking about them as a whole.
Thank you.
Thank you for the clarification.
Any other member of the public wish to speak? Okay, and Tom, you have what you need from us to proceed?
Yes.
Very good, thank you. Thank you to the board for your comments. Moving on to agenda item D, Blue Barn Meadows Stage 1 Improvements Security Release Certification number 4. I will call on our planner, Greg Adams. We have several of these, so please state.
Thank you. Yes, as you pointed out, this is Blue Barn Meadows Stage 1, 2, and 3. They're all requesting security releases at the same time. Stage 1, I believe, is security release number 4. Stage 2 is security release number 4, and stage 3 is security release number 2. These are done as a matter of course throughout the life of a project. When the developer feels that a certain percentage of his improvements are in place, he requests of the township engineer that they come out and inspect, confirm that they have actually been constructed, and then the township engineer does the calculations to determine how much of the security could be released based on basically the amount of items constructed. So we're looking at stage 1 here, security release number 4. They are requesting a release of $156,947.74 for this release certification number 4.
Very good, thank you, Greg. Are there any board comments or questions on this matter? Anything from the public? Hearing and seeing none, do I have a motion to proceed with the release?
Take a motion.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Thank you, Greg. Moving on to agenda item E, Blue Barn Meadows Stage 2 Improvement Security Release Certification number 4.
And as I'd mentioned, this is for Blue Barn Meadows Stage 2. This is their 4th security release request. And in this one, they are requesting a release of $75,823.00 from their security for Stage 2.
Very good. Thank you, Greg. Any board discussion? Any public comment? I'll make a motion to approve the release. Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Moving on to agenda item F, Blue Barn Meadows Stage 3 Improvement Security Release Certification number 2.
And this is the last in the trio. This is for Stage 3. This is their 2nd request to release security, and they are requesting a release of $159,672.06.
Thank you, Greg. Any board discussion? Anything from the public? I'll make a motion to proceed with said release. Is there a second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Thank you, Greg.
Thank you.
Moving on to agenda item G, Jordan Creek Greenway Trail Project Update. I will ask our township manager, Tom Petrucci, and our long-range planner, Chris Stroller, to please present.
Thank you. So during the last board meeting, we had reviewed the financial aspects to date for the engineering and planning and design for the Jordan Creek Greenway. As promised to the board, we felt it was necessary to review where the project is currently at from a project management standpoint for construction, acquisition, and where we need to do where we need to get the projects from a connectivity standpoint across municipal boundaries. So with that, I will call upon Chris Stroller to provide that overview to you.
Being that I'm near the end of the agenda, I'll do my best to keep this brief for you. Thank you, Dave, for pulling up the map here. I wanted to present really a map of the overview of the entire Greenway, really starting in the city of Allentown, going through our township up to Trexler Nature Preserve. As you know, this is really a multi-municipal effort, a regional effort, and it's a priority for the township. The areas that I've highlighted here, as Tom mentioned, there's been a number of developments both within South Whitehall, but I also want to highlight some things that are happening outside of our township. In the past year or so, there have been some developments in Allentown and Whitehall. You can see the dark green lines there going along the creek. Those are completed sections of trail. Just this past year, we've seen about a mile completed in Allentown that completes really their portion of the trail construction. And we see the same going all the way through Whitehall Township and through the Lehigh County's Jordan Creek Parkway. So altogether, there's about 3.5 miles there that have been completed. And within our own township, as you all know, the section that was constructed just to the west of Ware Mill Road in 2019 with a beautiful boardwalk along the creek, that's heavily used. And we are in the process, as Tom mentioned, looking at what we call phase one going through Covered Bridge Park. The township is the recipient of about $1 million grant from the PennDOT Transportation Alternative Set Aside program, which is allowing us to construct that section that will connect to the boardwalk section along Ware Mill Road and run through Covered Bridge Park. We are actually on track. We had a meeting this afternoon to look at having that out to bid this fall, and we are hoping to see construction of that into early next year. And continuing along with that, we're looking at about another mile section that would connect those 2 previous miles to Parkland High School and Cedar Crest Boulevard, which would allow for really a much greater connected piece within our park system and extending outward. On either end of those sections, we know that there are privately owned lands that we have already identified in the current official map for the township. And we also are looking at whenever there is any opportunity to work with those landowners on making connections, as we have in the past. The township has acquired easements. We can look at direct land acquisition and any opportunity to continue the connectivity on township-owned or controlled property. Along with looking kind of westward up to Trexler Nature Preserve in North Whitehall Township, Lehigh County is the owner and manager of the Trexler Nature Preserve, and they are also continuing to make connections to the trail. They have been the recipient of a grant to design and construct that little yellow section there along Jordan Road, which will be a nice anchor point for North Whitehall Township to look at looking at some on-road connections and continuing further connections into our township. As I've mentioned in the beginning, this is a multi-municipal effort. For many years, the townships and the county have worked together on this. At the same time, we are also partnering with these communities to look at a strategic plan, kind of an update to now that there are sections of trail being built. What is the formal or informal process for us to work together on the management of this regional trail and how we continue this working relationship moving forward? So I'm happy to take any questions on what the projects the township has going on, or really kind of the direction we're going. But that's really the kind of high level overview.
Excellent. Thank you, Chris, for summing up this project for us. I know for me, I've heard bits and pieces of it over the years. It's nice to see the entirety of the trail, and exciting to think that one day soon we'll be connected with the Trexler Nature Preserve. I'll open up to the board. Are there any comments or questions specifically?
I just have one question. first, well done. Like Commissioner Kelly said, it's really nice to see the entire project in one proposal. That's really nice to see, and also to see how much has already been completed. Given the fact that much of the work, designing, engineering, that has to be done will be in South Whitehall, do we have it's just my personal curious knowledge, but do we have a target time frame? Are we looking at a 5-year, 10-year? What has that even been discussed, or?
No, it's a great question. So the original, how this trail started was based on a trail feasibility study. And with that, we had looked at projected areas that could be constructed on township or municipally owned property, county owned property, so forth, and potential acquisitions. Given that, estimating basically target dates for knowing how long it takes to get public funding to do these projects, whether it's through grants or through municipal budgets, and then looking at the construction timelines associated with those. That feasibility study was done in 2009. I can personally attest to the design changes that have happened based on a trail that is located very close to a floodplain, working with private landowners, and working with, I believe, 5 across the entire section, 5 state road crossings. We've made adjustments as we've needed to. Part of the strategic plan that I had mentioned previously is looking at some of the more complicated gaps, including some of those state road crossings. And I will say the working on timelines with private land acquisition is the biggest question mark. We have very good timelines associated with the properties that we do own. As I mentioned, the phase 1, we're looking at hopefully completing phase 1 through Covered Bridge Park. We're looking at completing probably by mid next year. And phase 2, knowing that we're moving through design of that now, we can anticipate looking for construction funding later this year. The way that I personally would like to break this down is looking at these different phases of if we can move forward on design and engineering in certain sections, knowing that we need timelines associated with those for permitting, for usually grants to get construction funding takes about a year or so. We can have those pieces working at the same time we might be working on acquisitions or other construction pieces. So just because we have a fairly large construction project coming up this year, we know the next anticipated steps. It's a bit of a domino effect, hopefully.
Chris, I just had a question on the next section that we're going to hopefully begin construction on next year. How long do you expect that construction period will last?
We did have a meeting about it today. Just based on my experience, I say no less than 4 months, no longer than 10 months. I kind of looked at Tom, and that's just because we are looking to put it out to bid in the fall. We don't know what the winter weather would look like and when they can start.
Excellent, thank you. Any other board comments or questions? Anything from the public? Nothing online, Dave? Chris, thank you very much for the update. We appreciate that.
Thank you.
Moving on to agenda item 13, courtesy of the floor. It's opportunity for any member of the public to comment on any non-agenda item. Is there anyone in the public who'd like to comment at this time? Anybody online?
Rob, did you still want to speak at the courtesy of the floor?
Nope, I'm good. Thank you.
Very good. Moving on to agenda item 14, I need a motion to authorize payment of invoices and disbursements. I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. We have no executive session to announce this evening. I will make a motion to adjourn. Is there a second? Second. All in favor? Aye. This motion is adjourned.